He prohibited us from offering a harlot's fee or the sale revenue of a dog. And that is his saying, do not bring a harlot's fee or the sale revenue for a dog to the house of the Lord. The regulations of this commandment have already been explained in the 6th chapter of Tamura. One who offers anything of them, given that a sacrifice from them is disqualified, is lashed, like the law of someone who offers an animal with a blemish. So these are very specific prohibitions in the Torah. The question is there something more general? But there's two issues I wanted to look into. One is whether or not we are meant to extend this to other areas of our life. So, for instance, let's say you assume that the harlot's fee is an example of something that is ill-gotten gains. You could be more specific that it's ill-gotten gains from something that's considered also an immoral kind of act, or you could say it's broadly an example of ill-gotten gains. Again, as far as the laws of sacrifice go, this is a specific law that if something was given to a harlot as payment, let's say it's an animal, it was given, like, for instance, let's say in the case of Yehuda and Tamar, so he was bringing goats, or he was having goats sent to her as payment. So that would have been an animal that she received as payment for harlotry, for prostitution. And so that would be, the Torah would be forbidding those animals from being brought as a korban, and anytime that came up, that would be forbidden. So that's a very surgically specific law. The question is, are we meant to expand and say that for something that we consider a holy endeavor, you should not take ill-gotten gains, and or some. So, for instance, something that was stolen, or an item that was stolen, or let's say there's somebody who makes their living from something that is considered illegal. So should we accept that as a donation for a holy project, like a synagogue or a school or something like that? So that's one topic that I think is related here. Another topic is, what is the Torah's feeling about dogs? Like, why is it that the money derived from the sale of a dog is a problem? What's wrong with dogs? So I'm just gonna give a quick search here and then see if there's something to look at about that. All right, so Okay, it does look good. So I'm gonna second. Let's see this. Okay. So we'll look at the dog one first, since we have former dog owners amongst us. Okay, this is by Rabbi Jechter, Rabbi Chaim Jechter. His stuff is usually very good. Reprinted with permission of the Journal of Halacha and Contemporary Society. Introduction. In recent decades, it has become common amongst some observant Jews to own pets. The pet owner, however, is regularly confronted with a wide variety of halachic issues. The following several articles will discuss a number of these issues, among them caring for a pet's needs, removing reproductive organs, Shabbos problems, and being a guide dog into a shul. The discussion will begin with an examination of fundamental question, the halachic propriety of owning pets. The halachic literature indicates that it has been common practice among Ashkenazic Jews over the past several centuries to own non-farm animals, especially dogs. Rabbinic authorities have debated the propriety and permissibility of this practice. Their positions depend to a great extent on how they harmonize seemingly contradictory Talmudic texts, which appear in Tractate Bava Kama. The Gemara in Bava Kama cites Reb Nosson, who asserts that one who raises an evil dog in his home violates the biblical prohibition, do not place blood in your home. The implication is that it is permissible to raise a dog in one's home, provided that the creature is not an evil dog. Rabbi Yishmael, in fact, permits one to raise a type of dog known as the kofri dog. Rashi, small dogs or large hunting dogs which do no harm, since they help eliminate rodents. On the other hand, the Gemara in Bava Kama writes that one is forbidden to own a dog unless it is securely chained. If the dog is securely chained, it will neither do any damage nor frighten anyone with its bark. Moreover, the Amoraim pronounced a curse upon one who owns dogs, Bava Kama 83a. These statements seem to apply to all dogs. Rambam, that's our Rambam, in Hilchos Nizkei Mamon, in fact, rules that it is forbidden to raise any dog unless it is secured by chains, since dogs frequently cause considerable damage. Rambam apparently believes that Rabbi Yishmael's permissive ruling is contradicted by the Mishnah and the Gemara and Bava Kama 7983 respectively. Rabbi Yishmael accordingly would be the sole authority who permits raising kofri dogs, and thus Rambam believes that the consensus of opinion amongst Talmudic authorities rejects this view. Most Rishonim, however, including Smag, Uraim, Tur, Hagos Maimonides, disagree with the Rambams and limit this prohibition of evil dogs. The authorities believe that the statements that appear in Bava Kama and 83 in those two places are limited to evil dogs. So according to the Rambam, you really should not have a dog unless that dog is always chained. But he's writing that most authorities disagree with him. The Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with the opinion that limit the prohibition to an evil dog, which means that only evil dogs are a problem, but non-evil dogs are not a problem. The Achronim, almost without exception, accept these opinions as well. Rabbi Yaakov Emden appears to be the lone authority who believes one is forbidden to own any type of dog. The question, though, is how to define an evil dog. Rashi explains why Bava Kama forbids raising a dog unless it's chained, writes, it bites and barks, thereby causing pregnant women to miscarry. Rashi could be interpreted in one of two ways. Since he uses the Hebrew letter vav, which sometimes mean and sometimes mean or, the first possibility is that an evil dog is one that both bites and barks. And the second possibility is that it either bites or barks. Reb Shlomo Luria is inclined to adopt the second possibility and accepts that a dog is considered to be evil if it barks, even if it does not bite. The reason for this, Reb Luria recounts, is that a dog's bark may cause a woman to miscarry. The Gemara, in fact, records 2 incidents of women who miscarried because they were frightened by dogs. Therefore, Rabbi Luria suggests that the only dogs one may own are the kofri dogs that Rabbi Shmuel explicitly permits. Rabbi Luria seems to indicate that one is permitted to own these dogs even if they bark. Apparently, since people are aware that these dogs are not harmful, they know that they need not fear these when these dogs bark. Here's my experience, and I'm sure it's yours as well, is that there are some people that are afraid of any dog, and not just like 1 out of 100. There are always a few people that are afraid of any dog. I had a tiny dog. He never weighed more than 10 pounds. And there were people that were frightened by the dog, and sometimes children. And even though I would try to help them overcome it and tell them that there's no reason to be afraid, there were some people who remained afraid of the dog. So apparently that is a problem. Nevertheless, Reb Luria limits his ruling to God-fearing individuals and concludes his discussion by stating, therefore, we must excuse the Jewish people who own dogs which bark but do not bite. But praised is one who is careful to limit ownership to kofri-type dogs, and blessings should be conferred upon him. The implication is that there is some halachic justification for those Jews who own dogs that bark but do not bite. The justification seems to be based on an interpretation of Rashi's description of an evil dog as one that both bites and barks. Accordingly, only a dog that bites would frighten a woman with its bark and possibly cause a miscarriage. Shulchan Aruch Harav adopts a similar, albeit somewhat more firm, stance on the issue. He notes that Jews commonly own dogs that bark but do not bite, and that some authorities justify this practice by limiting the definition of an evil dog to one that bites. The Shulchan Aruch Harav asserts, however, that this is a view rejected by the consensus of halachic authorities, that the category of evil dogs includes those dogs which bark even though they don't bite. Therefore, he concludes that all God-fearing Jews should be certain to keep their dogs that bark tied up in iron chains while people are awake, even if the dogs merely bark but do not bite. On the other hand, Knesset Hagdolah notes that the common practice amongst Jews is not to accept the stringent view of Yam Shel Shlomo and Shulchan Aruch Harav. He indicates the custom is to own dogs which bark as long as they don't bite. Although Knesset Hagdolah writes that the common practice amongst observant Jews is not to follow the opinion of Yam Shel Shlomo, it appears proper to follow the latter's opinion. First, Shulchan Aruch Harav, which is recognized as a major halachic work, supports Reb Luria's position. Second, the Gemara considers a dog's fearsome bark to be a public nuisance. Hence, if one chooses to own a dog, one should be certain that not only does the dog not bite, but also that the creature does not frighten people with its bark. However, if one finds it absolutely necessary to raise a dog that may cause harm, one must be certain the animal is tied up securely at times when it may do damage either with its bite or its bark. Now, here, he's making it clear that he does not think that you have to lock it up, you have to tie it up when it's in your house, or let's say you have a fence that it can't jump over. It would only be if you were outside amongst other people that it could harm. And again, there are opinions here that you shouldn't own a dog, basically. I mean, these are pets. We're not talking about work dogs here. They're talking about pets. But if you have a pet, there are some opinions you shouldn't own any dog. There are some opinions that you could own. Well, let's put it this way: you could own. Well, yeah, there's some opinions that you might be able to own it, but you'd always have to keep it secured. There's another opinion that, and there seems to be a lot of people who say that if it barks in a frightening way, and certainly if it bites, that you can't have it anywhere that it could either frighten people or bite people. Okay. Rabbi Yaakov Emden adds a further restriction to the type of dog one may own. He writes that one is permitted to own a dog if the creature serves as an economic or protective purpose. However, he strongly condemns ownership of a dog as a pet as being a waste of time and precisely the abhorrent behavior of the uncircumcised. Nonetheless, Rabbi Yaakov Emden does not marshal sources to support the position and appears to constitute a minority view. The Shulchan Aruch, most authorities limit the Talmudic prohibition to the ownership of evil dogs. The clear implication is that one may own a dog for any reason, provided it's not an evil dog. Moreover, the Talmud indicates that Jews use various animals for recreational purposes. The Mishnah relates that children used to play with a certain type of locust. Animals, I'm sorry, this is just animals, not just dogs. This is pets. The Mishnah relates that children used to play with a certain type of locust. The Gemara tells of a certain type of bird known as a kalanida, with which children used to play. These two passages seem to demonstrate the Mishnah had no objections to people keeping animals for enjoyment, contrary to the position of Yaakov Emden. Rabbi Emden might respond that these passages do not discuss dogs and do not prove that one may keep a dog as a pet. Emden might agree that one can own a pet which doesn't require much attention. Perhaps he believes that only keeping a dog as a pet mimics the abhorrent behavior of the uncircumcised. Our discussion regarding dogs appears to apply to ownership of other animals as well. The Shulchan Aruch rules that one may kill an evil cat, which harms children. Once again, the rule is limited to an evil animal. The general principle, according to most authorities, is that one may own a pet provided that the animal does not pose a danger to people or property. Okay. All right, I'm going to just read this note from 12 here. A number of authorities disapprove of keeping animals as pets, such as Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, who condemns owning birds as adding nonsense. He adds that the money one spends on the birds should have been donated to charity. The Sephardic halachic authority, Rabbi Chaim Pelagi, cites this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. Rabbi Yaakov Breish also writes that it is inconsistent with the spirit of Judaism to own a dog. However, he doesn't offer any proof for this assertion. In addition, a number of authorities object to owning dogs based on Kabbalistic teachings. However, these comments have not been incorporated into mainstream halachic works, such as the Shulchan Aruch. It should be noted, though, that it is unquestionably permissible for a blind person to own a guide dog. These dogs are well trained, do not pose any danger. In addition, owning such an animal does not mimic the abhorrent behavior of the uncircumcised, since the owner has a great need for the dog. It also should be noted that a number of rabbinic authorities believe placing a bird into a cage to be a violation of Tsar Balei Chaim, a prohibition against causing unnecessary pain to animals. This is cited by Rabbi J.D. Bleich, Contemporary Halachic Problems, Volume 3, page 195. And then in his final note, 3 essays have recently been published on this topic in Hebrew. Rabbi Yaakov Navon presents the opinions of Rabbi Luria and Rabbi Emden as authoritative. He fails to note both the Knesset Hagdolah's recording of the common practice amongst Jews to follow a more lenient rule than that of Rabbi Luria, and the latter's defense of the practices of those who own dogs which bark but do not bite. Moreover, he does not note that Rabbi Emden's position is rejected by most authorities. Rabbi Yigal Ariel's essay concludes that it is preferable to restrict one's ownership to dogs to those which do not frighten people with their bark. In his book, Rabbi Menachem Slay examines the propriety of owning pets purely for recreational purposes in a chapter called Achzachat Chayot Bait Ketachbiv, and provides a wealth of resources on this topic. He notes positive aspects of pet ownership, such as acquiring an appreciation of the magnificence of God's creation. It is worthwhile to note that in classical rabbinic writings, there exist positive comments regarding dogs' loyalty to their masters, in the Talmud, etc. On the other hand, Sefer HaChinuch, in his explanation of why the Torah forbids offering a sacrifice purchased with money acquired from the sale of a dog, writes, it is well known that dogs are brazen and mean. I think I've told you maybe on more than one occasion, I once had this encyclopedia called the Encyclopedia Yisraelis. I might still have it somewhere. It was like a 5-volume encyclopedia written in Hebrew, published by J.D. Eisenstadt in 1906. And he tried to incorporate both halachic discussions and a regular encyclopedia into one. So when you look up a topic like dog, which would be Kelev, because it's a Hebrew encyclopedia, you'd have all the stuff you expect to find in a regular encyclopedia, but then you'd also have a discussion of the halachic issues with regard to dogs. So he sort of put it all together. At one point, he made the comment that dogs are referred to like 24 times in the Talmud. 21 of them are negative. There is an assumption that people will have dogs even in the Torah. It says, for instance, when you have treif meat, you should throw it to dogs. So there does seem to be a big distinction between working dogs and as he's trying to make there, and dogs for recreation. He's quite confident that if the dog has a pragmatic purpose, like a guide dog, then that it would be completely permissible for the person to have it. And I think nowadays we'd probably extend it to what people call comfort dogs. And I would assume that nowadays people would consider the need for, if somebody has anxiety that is relieved by having the dog around, that would be the same as having a guide dog. I remember having this conversation with my father once. There was a boy in the Milwaukee, in Rabbi Twersky's Milwaukee community where I grew up, and my father continued to live there until a year ago, in that community. So there was a boy who had something like he had what is it called? It was a condition at birth that caused him to lead a kind of separate, lonely life. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there is something that's tickling on the edge of my memory. Anyways, he was your heart goes out to this kid. And you realize that it's going to be very unlikely for him to have friends, and that his life is going to be lonely. And I remember saying to my father, because in the Hasidic communities, nobody has dogs. It's just not unless somebody is like a Baal Tshuva, and they come to the Hasidic community later in life, then you will have a few families. Like in Milwaukee, there's a couple of families that have dogs, but it's very rare. In a regular, in a Hasidic community that's been around for a long time, you don't have it. It's completely not done at all. But I was saying that this is an example where sticking to a custom like that's not based on halacha, it's just become a kind of custom of the people, when it would add such quality of life to this kid. Because if you can't have human companions, you could have a dog. And it has been demonstrated in study after study after study of the dramatic impact having a pet can have on the health, certainly the emotional health, but even the physical health and longevity of people. And it seems like such a no-brainer. And the only thing that's getting in the way is it's just not done. And there are things like that I find annoying, but I get it, because it's a strong pressure to conform when it comes to these things. But being courageous and being willing to make an exception in the face of that, I think it is actually courage that is being expressed. Anyways, so that very last line justified our looking up all that other stuff, because he's quoting the Torah does not explicitly say why it would be a problem to have the money that comes from the sale of a dog to buy a korban. So he is speculating, and this is an early work. This is, if you're studying the mitzvos, let's say you want to go through all 613 mitzvos as a curriculum. So there are probably the most influential of the book on the mitzvahs is the Rambam's. But coming up a close second is that book called Sefer HaChinuch. Technically, it translates to Book of Instruction. And he goes through the 613 mitzvahs. He seems to agree with the Rambam on what those 613 are. He doesn't do it in the same order. He goes in the order of the Torah portions. The Rambam does not. But he also oftentimes will add explanations. There is some lore about the origin of that book, Sefer HaChinuch, that it seems. I mean, he seems to say this, but that that the book was written to be a book of instruction for his son, so that it wasn't necessarily originally written with as a scholarly work. It was written as an instructional work, but it is treated as a scholarly work. And there's a really important later commentary called the Minchas Chinuch, which is really taken very seriously amongst Talmudic scholars and halachic halachic scholars. So that work, even a statement like that, which he's making, again, they're speculating. Even when the Rambam does this, when he gives rationale for mitzvahs, they're what we would call educated guesses. But you can see he's writing it in the 1200s, and his explanation is that dogs are particularly mean and dangerous. By the way, he hasn't dealt with the issue of, like, if your dog barks at night and keeps people awake, that could be halachically forbidden to have that dog, because you're not allowed. It's considered a form of damage to wake people up or keep them up. It's actually considered harm to other people. So if you have a dog that barks and keeps other people awake at night, regularly, again, these are all theoretical discussions, but they talk about them in these halachic works. But that could be forbidden. And if your dog bit people or is a danger to bite people, that dog could be forbidden to own halachically. There's all sorts of other halachic issues about whether it's halachically permitted to neuter or spay an animal. It doesn't seem to be halachically permitted for a Jew to do that. And that's a dramatic issue of pet ownership. Like there are some suggestions of workarounds for that, but that can be a halachic issue. I asked Rabbi first about that, because there's some people, what they do is they give it if they go to a vet that's a Gentile, and then they give it to the vet. They give the ownership of it to the vet, and therefore the vet owns it and not them. He felt that was not a successful workaround. He did not support that. He told me that if there's a health reason for why the dog needs to be neutered, then you're allowed to have him neutered or spayed. So what happened with our dog is, for the first couple of years, we did not have him neutered, which was brought up every time we brought him to the vet. They brought that up to us. But then there was a health issue. He had a tumor removed, and the vet told me that having him neutered would reduce the likelihood that the tumors will come back. So that was my permit. So when they removed the tumors, they neutered him. So at that point, I was in compliance with everybody's feelings about dogs being neutered. Also, our dog would escape.
Means loyal.
Does it?
Yeah.
What were you saying?
I'm sorry, Reb. I didn't know you could overhear me. I thought
That's okay. That's fine.
Actually, I thought the word Kelev, which is our grandson's name in Hebrew, his Caleb, means loyal.
Well, there's a connection to the word lave. Let's look it up here. Let's just look up the name. There is sometimes when a name is emphasizing that it's very unusual. Sephardic Jews will not they do. I was once told this by a Rav who specialized in Gittin, in divorces. So that you have to know names. You have to become like a scholar of names when you're doing divorces. So he told me, just as his own observation, he said that Sephardic Jews, he's noticed that Sephardic Jews do not name their children animal names. So you will not find a Sephardic Jew with the name Zev.
Oh.
Or Dove,
Tzvi.
or
Tzvi.
Aryeh, even Aryeh or Tzvi. You will not find
Yeah.
Sephardic ones. So now I don't know. It could be. I don't remember if he said non-kosher animals or just I'm almost positive he said animals in general. So then I asked. But then you have biblical names like Devorah is a bee, Rachel is a lamb, is a ewe. Kalev seems to be named. Also, Hulda is a kind of a weasel. I'm just gonna look here to see about this. 1 second. I start over here. Okay, here we go. Ashkenazim obviously do it and are proud of those names. They're fine names. Yeah, of course they're great. Kalev is a great biblical.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's an explanation that Kalev means wholehearted or all heart, combining the words kol, all, and lave. The question is, where are they getting this from? Problem is, right. So the thing is, yeah. Let's see who else says this. The problem is when it comes to names, and Kalev is mentioned there's more than one person with the name Kalev in the Torah, in Tanakh.
Oh, who's that?
There's also a Kalev, son of Chetzron, who's a son of Peretz, who's a son of Yehuda and Tamar, which is a different Kalev. Let's see. Yeah, but there it doesn't. The problem is a lot of the sites that talk about this don't cite their sources for where they get their notion from. Let's see here. Name. Yeah, so there's not as much discussion of this as you would imagine. All right, we could look more into it, but yeah, it could just be. Again, you could see that there are animals that have characteristics that are admirable at the same time that they would make terrible pets or something. And like the lion or the leopard or they're drawn on because they do have characteristics that are admirable. Even the question is why, okay, it's a good question. It's a very good question. Okay. Yeah.
The other thing is, wouldn't chaining up a dog be constituted as cruelty to an animal?
Right, but then, so somebody would say then, since that is your only choice, so if in fact that would be cruel treatment of a dog, then that person couldn't have a dog. That's what they'd say.
Well, I agree if that's their only.
But also, he seemed to say that it seemed like from him that keeping them in the house or in the fence, let's say you had a fenced-in area that it can't get out of, constituted the same thing as a chain. In other words, it doesn't necessarily have to physically. At first, it sounded like it. I agree. At first, it did sound like you have to have them chained up.
Right.
But then he seemed to suggest that having them in a place where they can't get near other people or scare other people would be the equivalent of having them chained up.
Tell that to our neighbor, our former neighbor, who had a Siberian Husky who dug under the fence and came into our yard and jumped on me. I mean, it's a friendly dog, but I mean,
yeah.
The fence just wasn't quite the answer. But
right, so then it wouldn't. Then
it was a fun.
I agree. Our dog used to get under. Our dog used to get under our fence in our other house, and the neighbor would always yell. You could hear the neighbor like swearing, "Get this dog out of my lawn!" Like he. Now that might have been, might have constitute a prohibition. If he had taken me to Baston, they might tell me I have to get rid of the dog if I can't keep it in the house. Okay,